Fable 2 is a distant sequel to the first Fable on the original Xbox. Much like its predecessor, this game is an action RPG mixed with real-world simulation such as getting a job and getting married. This game was made by Lionhead Studios, which was headed by Peter Molyneux, and was published by Microsoft. Fable 2 is a noticeable step up from the original Fable in terms of visuals. While the original was visually a very appealing game for its time, it's clear to see the difference in technology between the two games. However, despite this, the world in the original Fable, at least in my opinion, felt more alive. That isn't to say that the world of Fable 2 was designed poorly. However, I felt that the world in the original Fable had more interesting vistas. The different parts of Albion in the original game felt more distinct and had more character. Still, the world of Fable 2 is not a bad one to explore by any means, and is still fairly fun to run around in. The music in Fable 2 is actually quite good. Some of the tracks are very calming and relaxing. I actually found myself at times just sitting around and chilling and enjoying the different music. The songs fit the look and feel of the game, as well as the areas and towns that they're used in. As the game has a very quirky, kind of offbeat look to it, the music perfectly blends in. The voice acting in this game, though, is a little hit or miss. There are some truly great performances here. However, some actors, you can tell, are really forcing a fake British accent. It's not too bad, but it can be distracting at times when you notice it. Still, it's nothing game-breaking, just something that comes off as odd from time to time. Now, the story of Fable 2, I feel, is a big step up from the original. The story in the first game was really straightforward, and while I feel that's the case in this game as well, it does have some extra elements that are absent in the original. For starters, you have other heroes that you have to recruit that have their own unique personalities. Hannah the Hammer is the first one you meet, and I think she's a great character. She's reckless and brash, but at the same time she's compassionate, and, at least I think, pretty charming. Later you meet Garth, who's hero of will. He's intelligent, opinionated, and has a strong sense of justice. He and Hannah don't get along. It's interesting to see their banter at times. Apart from these characters, the story itself is your standard fare. Not a whole lot of twists and turns for the most part. My biggest issue with the story is the ending, which I felt ended on a half-hearted and anticlimactic note. However, this was both in a story sense and a gameplay sense. The ending of the game is easily this game's biggest flaw, but obviously I won't get into why. I also felt that a lot of the side quests were mostly boring and uninteresting. They were just the typical go here and kill that. Now there were a few of them that actually were pretty interesting and had some charm to them, but I felt that they were way too few and far between. Now, let's tackle the gameplay. This game attempted to take the positives of the original and to try and expand upon them and fix the issue. And in some ways actually does succeed, but in some ways it doesn't. The game employs a simplified battle system. Instead of pressing a button to sheath and unsheath your melee and ranged weapons, now you simply just press X to swing your sword, press Y to shoot your projectile, and you press B for magic. While it's a good idea on paper, and it does work well for the most part, there are some hiccups in the controls that keep it from really working out. There's also one major flaw in the gameplay that really holds the combat back, which I will get into later. First of all, when you learn new moves for melee, you have to hold down the attack button in order to block. This was a terrible idea. Ever since learning how to block, it's now suddenly become an issue that whenever I attack an enemy, the game sometimes has issues realizing whether I'm trying to attack or trying to block, and my character will stutter as a result, instead of attacking the enemy. Eventually I got used to it, and this actually didn't happen as often once I got the controls down pat, but this could have been fixed by simply making block a separate button. Another control issue I have is with spells. There's a good number of spells in the game, ranging from shooting electricity, teleporting, summoning souls, a whole bunch of stuff. Now depending on how much you've leveled up the spell, you can charge it for more damage. For example, level 4 spell can be charged up to 4 times to deal more damage. What's interesting, or at least what should have been interesting, is that you can equip different spells in the different charge levels. So let's say at level 1 you could shoot fireballs. and then at level 2 you could shoot lightning, and then level 3 you could stop time. You get the idea. However, what was supposed to be a pretty unique idea is completely gone to waste by one huge design flaw. The A button is meant for running and dodging, and the right trigger is meant for absorbing glowing orbs, which are experience points. If you press the two buttons at the same time, whatever spell you have at level 1 will cancel out all the other spells on the entire list, and it simply becomes that one spell. Seeing how you will want to absorb experience points whenever you can, and you will need to dodge a lot, especially during this time, since you can't move your character while absorbing experience, you will constantly find yourself resetting whatever combinations you had, and this cool idea is for naught. However, the absolute biggest problem with the gameplay is how dying really doesn't matter. You lose some experience points and your character gets a scar or something which makes him uglier, but the punishment is too light and it makes the game much too easy. I really wish these issues were addressed, since they really get in the way of enjoying the combat. Besides these issues, the combat itself is actually a lot of fun. Some of the ways that combat is fun is how the game changes itself up by offering different types of melee and ranged weaponry, and of course I already mentioned all the different spells. You can have different swords and hammers and pistols and rifles and crossbows. Switching back and forth between the melee and the magic and the projectiles can be a lot of fun, especially later on in the game, when you grow progressively more powerful. Now, whenever you hit an enemy with either form of attack, they will drop experience specific to that type. There are 4 types of experience in the game. There's strength, skill, will, and general experience. You can use these experience points to buy abilities respective to these skills. General experience, however, can be used to buy any skills, for any type. It's not too complex, but it's pretty fun just to level up and gain new abilities. You can choose to either be balanced between all 3, or choose to focus on one type specifically. The non-linear character progression is fun and intuitive. Now, something else I really liked about this game was your dog. The developers actually did a really good job of getting me to care about the dog, which honestly surprised me just how much I liked him by the end of the game. And it's probably the most well executed aspect of the real life simulator part of this game. Now, getting into that, this game can let you do different things like get married, have children, get a job, and choose to either be a good person or a bad one. While this sounds like it could add a lot to the game, and it does in some instances, in the end, it feels like the game is trying to juggle a little too many things at once, and ends up not really exceeding in anything. First of all, when I got married in this game, I did not care one bit about my wife or my family. To me, they just simply existed and nothing more. What's really a wasted opportunity to me was I can marry pretty much anyone in the game, except for Hannah, which was the only one I actually cared about, since she actually has a personality. It's actually kind of funny how a game that's all about making choices, and yet it refuses me the one choice I actually cared about making. You can also choose to have a job in this game, but they're just a series of mini-games so you can make money, and the mini-games are incredibly simple and not very fun at all. Now, a big selling point of the original Fable was the good and evil aspect of the game. This returns in Fable 2, but I feel it adds very little to the experience. Now here's something I felt Fable 2 did better than the original. Something that really bothered me about the original was that the game had all these different types of clothing that you could wear, but there was no point in wearing anything that didn't offer the best defense. This game fixes that and makes it so that clothing really doesn't have any stats. So you can just mix and match and wear whatever you think looks coolest, as opposed to worrying about what has the best stats. However, clothes do have some insignificant stats that affect how people perceive you, but it's not really something that matters. Last thing to mention in this game would be the length. The original Fable was a pretty short game too, and unfortunately this game follows suit. It clocked in for me about 8 to 10 hours. The short length is mostly due to the fact that this game is meant to be played more than once. But even BioWare games, which are meant for the exact same thing, last a lot longer than this. To wrap things up, I'm going to be honest, if a lot of the extra fluff in this game was removed, this game could have turned out a lot better. Resources could have gone into making the combat better, the game could have been longer, and we could have had a more satisfying end to the game. I know I sound like I'm complaining a lot here, and I don't mean to come off as this is a bad game. However, it's undeniable that I was very disappointed by this game in a lot of areas, and as far as the original was, it's in my opinion the superior of the two. Regardless of my complaints towards this game, the combat itself is fun, and the world world of Albion is a welcoming one. There is some fun to be had in this game, just as long as you keep the flaws that I mentioned in mind. Luckily, this game is only $5. I would say it's at least worth that much. In the end, the game feels like it has a lot of wasted potential, but it's still worth checking out for what it does right. This has been Shintai, everyone. Peace out.